Death has one unbreakable rule: dust returns to dust. From the moment the heart stops, the human body begins an implacable process of self-destruction. Cells break down, enzymes devour tissues, and bacteria claim what remains. It is a physical, chemical, and biological law that has governed every living being since the beginning of time. However, hidden in the crypts of European churches, in glass coffins exposed to humidity, and in forgotten tombs beneath the earth, there are bodies that have chosen to break their contract with nature. They are not frozen. They were not embalmed with the complex techniques of the Egyptian pharaohs. They are not mummified by the desert's aridity. They are the so-called incorrupt bodies. Corpses that defy the centuries, maintaining astonishing flexibility, skin that retains a certain elasticity, and, in some cases, a mysterious floral aroma that science, to this day, cannot fully decipher. Is it a divine miracle, a quirk of environmental chemistry, or an enigma that science simply refuses to admit it cannot solve? Prepare yourself, because today we will delve into the disturbing and fascinating mystery of bodies that refuse to decompose. To understand the magnitude of this mystery, we must first confront the monster head-on. What happens to a normal body when it dies? Within minutes, the lack of oxygen triggers autolysis, cells destroy themselves. Shortly after, putrefaction takes over, driven by the billions of bacteria that inhabit our own gut. The body swells, gases accumulate, and tissues liquefy. In a few years, only dry bones remain. But with incorruptible bodies, this timeline is broken. When researchers and scientists open these tombs, sometimes centuries after burial, they don't find a skeleton. They find a body that appears to have died just hours before. Witnesses to these exhumations throughout history repeat the same striking patterns. Joint flexibility, unlike rigor mortis, which stiffens a corpse in hours, many of these bodies retain mobile limbs centuries later. Liquid blood, cases have been documented where, upon making an incision or moving the body, fresh, red blood has flowed out, something biologically impossible after decades of cardiovascular inactivity. The scent of sanctity, instead of the unbearable stench of decay, witnesses describe a sweet aroma, similar to roses, lilies, or jasmine, emanating from the remains and saturating the rooms. Bernadette Soubirous, who died in 1879 in Nevers, France, was a humble shepherdess who claimed to have seen the Virgin Mary. After her death at age 35, her body was buried in a damp crypt, an ideal environment for accelerated decomposition. 30 years later, in 1909, in preparation for her canonization, her body was exhumed. What the doctors found shocked the scientific community. Dr. Chaz San, the forensic pathologist present, wrote in his official report that the body showed no odor or signs of decomposition. The skin was taut, the eyes sunken but intact, and her fingernails retained their perfect shape. She was exhumed twice more, in 1919 and 1925. The result was the same. Although today her face has a thin layer of wax, applied to prevent the skin from darkening upon public display, medical analyses confirmed that her internal organs and muscular structure remained intact. Science argued that it could be adipocere, body fat converted into a kind of natural soap, but the conditions in the tomb did not meet the chemical requirements for this process. One of the most famous saints of the 20th century, Padre Pio, died in 1968. Known worldwide for bearing the wounds of the crucifixion, stigmata, on his hands and feet, which bled for 50 years, his death was closely observed. In 2008, 40 years after his death, his tomb was opened. Vatican City scientists and independent experts discovered that his body was in an extraordinary state of preservation. His hands, the same ones that had bled for decades without ever becoming infected during his life, were perfectly formed. As with Bernadette, a hyperrealistic silicone mask was placed on him for public display, but the underlying tissues defied the passage of time in ways inexplicable for a man who suffered from multiple chronic illnesses. This is perhaps one of the most visually striking and eerie cases. Catherine died in 1463. She was buried directly in the ground, without a coffin. 18 days later, due to reported miracles at her tomb and a strange, sweet smell emanating from the soil, they decided to exhume her. Despite having been in direct contact with damp earth and worms, the body showed not a single sign of decay. Today, more than 550 years later, Saint Catherine of Bologna is not lying down, she sits in a gilded chair, dressed in her nun's habit, in her chapel in Italy. Although her skin has darkened over the centuries due to candle smoke and exposure to the air, her joints remain so flexible that the church caretakers can change her clothes every year as if she were a living person who simply refuses to move. Faced with these phenomena, science has not remained idle. Scientists, pathologists, and forensic anthropologists have attempted to find rational answers in the laws of physics and chemistry. There are three main theories, but all have profound flaws. It occurs when a body is exposed to extreme cold, absolute dryness, or constant drafts that evaporate the body's water before bacteria can act. Many of the incorruptible bodies were found in extremely damp underground tombs, rotten wooden coffins, or swampy soils where mummification is physically impossible. Humidity normally accelerates decomposition; here, it seemed to freeze it. Under certain conditions of humidity and lack of oxygen, the body's fat undergoes hydrolysis, transforming it into a hard, waxy, soap-like substance that protects the surrounding tissues. Saponified bodies become extremely brittle, grayish-white in color, and emit a rancid, unpleasant odor. Incorrupt bodies, on the other hand, tend to be flexible, maintain more natural skin tones, and smell of flowers. Furthermore, adipocere destroys the detailed features of the face, something that doesn't occur in these cases. Skeptics suggest that the Catholic Church or other institutions secretly embalmed these bodies using advanced techniques of the time, such as injecting arsenic or mercury, to simulate miracles and attract pilgrims. In many cases, the exhumations were carried out unexpectedly, or the bodies belonged to people from extremely poor monastic orders who had no access to doctors or expensive substances. Moreover, modern chemical analyses in cases like Bernadette's have found no traces of heavy metals or the chemicals typical of artificial embalming in the internal organs. If we set aside skin preservation, we enter the realm of pure medical anomalies, the kind that leave pathologists scratching their heads. Let's talk about body temperature. Historical records document that some of these bodies, months after death, maintained a temperature slightly higher than the ambient temperature of the crypt, as if a faint spark of metabolic life still burned within. Then there's the mysterious phenomenon of exuded bodily fluids. Saint Walburga, who died in 779, has her remains in a rock from which, it is reported, a clear, odorless medicinal oil has emanated for centuries. Modern chemical studies have shown that this liquid is neither condensed water nor seepage from the rock, but an organic substance whose exact composition remains a subject of debate. And, of course, there's the enigma of the odor of sanctity, osmogenesis. From a purely biological perspective, the smell of a corpse is caused by compounds such as cadaverine and putrescine, which are repulsive to the human nose for evolutionary survival reasons. How is it possible for dead tissue to generate stable volatile compounds that smell like floral perfume for decades? No laboratory has managed to replicate this perfumed decomposition process. The mystery of incorruptible bodies places us at an uncomfortable crossroads. On the one hand, blind faith immediately attributes it to divine intervention, a sign of spiritual purity that transcends death. On the other, radical skepticism prefers to ignore the documented anomalies, simply labeling them as historical frauds or rare environmental coincidences. But the reality we find in the medical reports of the most rigorous forensic experts is that current science does not have a definitive answer for all cases. Every time a theory seems to explain one body, it fails completely when applied to the next. Perhaps the human body hides biological preservation mechanisms that we still don't understand. Or maybe the boundary between life, death, and cellular tissue is much more blurred than medical textbooks have led us to believe. If you could visit one of these crypts and see these people who seem to have been trapped in an eternal sleep for centuries, what do you think you would see? A miracle frozen in time, an inexplicable whim of nature, or proof that science still has a long way to go to understand the secrets of our existence? Leave your opinion in the comments. If this journey to the edge of the inexplicable has fascinated you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next mystery. Until next time.